Okay, welcome back. We're on deck. This is Prep Test 86, the second logical reasoning section, and we're going to kick off here with question number 19. Issue presented. Which one of the following would be most useful in order to evaluate the strength of the argument? So let's see what we have here. European wood ants incorporate large quantities of solidified conifer resin into their nests. So stop for a second, take that in. All right, so the wood ants, and they use whatever this resin is. They use large quantities of it for their nests. The resin, conifer resin, is a natural disinfectant that has been shown to kill strains of bacteria that can cause disease in the wood ants. So the second sentence brings in information that the resin has a natural, it serves as a natural disinfectant. Okay, so the ant may or may not, have that an awareness of that. So it has this quality. And now the conclusion. So we're done with our DNA. That's our evidence. The conclusion here is thus the wood ant's use of conifer resin probably came about as a disease protection measure. Okay, we want to evaluate that conclusion because it may or may not have come about as a disease protection measure. There may have been some other, that's some other purpose that the resin served. Okay, A. Whether conifer resin retains its disinfectant property over a very long period of time. Well, that's not really helping us. That's got to do with the period of time and not with the quality of disease protection. B, whether the nests of European wood ants generally contain more of the resin at some time in the years than others. I don't think that helps at all. You presumably want to be disinfected year-round. C, whether any ant species other than European wood ants use the resin in their nests. Well, no, that's not helping me evaluate because I don't know why they're using it. D, whether the use of the resin affords structural benefits to the European wood ant's nest. Yes, that absolutely helps because then you're saying it may not be as a disinfectant, it may be structural. E, whether the disinfectant properties of the resin evolved as a disease protection measure for the trees. Well, I don't really care about the trees, I care about the ants, so that's not the answer. So the answer to 19 is D for Drusus. Question number 20. The issue is, if the statements above are true, which one of the following must be true? Okay, let's see what we have here. Coming up with secure passwords for confidential computer files is difficult. I got it. Users prefer passwords that are easy to remember, such as birth dates or relatives' names. Okay, I got that too. So this is at least written down to earth. Unfortunately, these are the easiest to guess for an outsider who wants to gain access to valuable information. Again, this really is written so it's at least approachable in understanding it. So sure, I want to use my birthday, so somebody wants to take my information, they find out my birthday and they guess that maybe I've used that as my password. Got it. Random configuration of letters and numbers are the hardest to guess. So now we're seeing a comparison. Okay. I got it. But these are also the easiest for legitimate users to forget. So, right. So I have these, random letters, random numbers, random signs, and it's effective, but I don't remember it. Users who forget their passwords use up the system administrator's time, so that's certainly a drawback for the complicated password. And furthermore, passwords that are very difficult to remember are generally written down, which makes sense, and they're generally written down by users, and hence pose the greatest security threat of all. So you want to know what must be true. I don't have the answer, but the answer, this argument is all around, do you have a complicated password or do you have a simple password? And if you have a complicated password, the problem there is you're likely to write it down, and if you write it down, that is the greatest risk of all. Whereas if you have a simple password, it's easier to guess. So, it's kind of like Hobson's choice. Do you want the one that's easier to guess, or do you want the one that you may have to write down, but if you write it down, it's the gravest threat at all. So what must be true, we'll see, but it certainly must be true that the complicated password, when it's written down, is a greater risk than the simple password. So let's see what we have here. A, computer users, I'm sorry, computer users should not write down their passwords, even if the passwords are hard to remember. Well, that sounds like a recommendation, and I mean, I would pick A. It's not real clear to me, so I'm not picking A. But if I were reading this, I'd say, well, let me keep reading. I don't know that must be true. Because are you really saying that computer users should never write down those passwords if they're hard to remember? I mean, what if you put them in a locked safe? So I would pick A if there's nothing better, but here's one where I absolutely would keep reading. B, it is expensive, must it be true, right? That it is expensive to have system administrators constantly resetting forgetful users' passwords. Well, I don't know that must be true. I know that you're using up the system administrator's time, but I don't know what the cost of that time is, so it doesn't have to be true that time is expensive. So B's not the answer. C, passwords that are very easy to guess pose less of a security threat than passwords that are very difficult to remember. Yeah, that's where this whole thing is moving. Because if they're very difficult to remember, you're apt to write it down. If you're apt to write it down, that's the greatest risk of all. Let me keep reading. D, passwords that are random configurations of letters and numbers are the least likely to result in security breaches. Well, no, because you may well write those down. E, the easier a password is to remember, the more secure the computer account, and that's just silly. So the answer is number 20 is C for Caligula, though I do have a fondness for A. It's just not the answer. 21. The issue, which one of the following most accurately expresses the overall conclusion? So again, 21, it correlates with the high fail rate, but the conclusion issue is quite straightforward as a rule of thumb. So let's see what they did here. Remember, what's the thing being explained? Okay. If you use a wood stove to heat your home, you should use a wood pellet stove rather than a regular wood stove. Well, that's a recommendation. That's a conclusion. Now, again, it could end up being a subordinate conclusion, but here I'm being told that if I'm going to use a wood stove, I want to use a wood pellet stove. Next sentence. Because wood pellets are made from byproducts of manufacturing processes that would otherwise go to landfills, heating a home with a wood pellet stove will not cause more trees to be felled. So that's an advantage of a wood pellet stove, and it is clear that the role in the argument of that sentence is support the argument's at least temporary conclusion, which is the first sentence. Next sentence. The same cannot be said for regular wood stoves. So again, that third sentence is reinforcing the position that was taken in the first sentence. Final sentence. And here they use the word so. Again, this is consistent with that question, the back half of this test getting more nuanced. Because people are going to see the word so, they're going to see the last sentence, and they're going to infer it's the conclusion. Well, maybe yes and maybe no. Let's see what role the argument plays. So wood pellet stoves are better for the environment than are regular wood stoves. Well, that's a subordinate conclusion. In other words, the role of that final sentence is, again, to basically sum up from the second and third sentence to say, as a result of that, they're better for the environment, the wood pellet stove. And as a result of that, if you use a wood stove to heat your home, you should use the wood pellet stove. So the conclusion is the first sentence. A. Wood pellets are made from waste products of manufacturing processes that would otherwise not be recycled. That's a piece of evidence in support of the conclusion. B, heating a home with a wood pellet stove is better for the environment than is heating a home with a regular wood stove. So that's either a subordinate conclusion, or you could say it's a supporting conclusion, which basically turns into a premise which supports the argument's main conclusion, but not the main conclusion. C, using a wood pellet stove to heat one's home does not cause trees to be felled. Again, that's an argument supporting the conclusion. D, using a regular wood stove to heat one's home causes trees to be felled. Same thing, that's an argument supporting that's a piece of evidence supporting the main conclusion. And E, people who use wood stoves to heat their homes should use wood pellet stoves instead of regular wood stoves. That is the argument's overall conclusion, and the answer for 21 is C for Caligula. Just need to be careful. Change the way you read, change the way you think. 22, which one of the following, if true, most seriously weakens the argument? I want to weaken the argument. Let me get the argument. Here's the argument from The Economist. Gifts of cash or gift cards, which allow the recipient to choose the actual gift, are more highly valued by recipients than are gifts chosen for them by others. So you want to stop and process. Again, it sounds like a conclusion. I want to process this. So I should give you a gift card or cash rather than purchase a gift for you, in that they are more highly valued than are the actual gifts. Okay, let me see why. So that's the argument's conclusion. Now I want to weaken that. So I want to weaken the argument that the recipient probably places a greater value on the gift card or on the cash than, on the table as a gift. Okay, here comes the evidence. So the evidence is in a study. In a study, when people were asked how much they would have been willing to pay for gifts chosen for them by others. So now it's about how much. So you've given me a gift. You've given me this table, and then somebody says to me, Peter, how much are you willing to pay for this? Okay, let's find out what happens. They responded by citing amounts that were on average only about 2/3 of the actual price of the gift. So you paid $100 for this table, and then I say to you, well, if I were to buy this, I'd only be willing to pay $67 for it. So based on that, the economist's argument is you should give me the $100 gift card because clearly I'm going to get $100 back from that, and I want to weaken that. So let me I tell you where they're going to go here. The conclusion refers to something that has a value. So the word value is remote. It's abstract. So in order for this reasoning to be valid, what I am willing to pay for a gift has to be the same as how I value a gift, and that need not be the case. What I'm willing to pay is some evidence of value, but it's not conclusive as to value. So I don't know where they're going, but I am confident that what they're going here, it's a textual test, is pay is part of value. It doesn't represent, or need not represent, complete value. Okay. A, the rate at which gifts are returned to retailers has been steadily increasing since the rate was first measured. So how's that helping me weaken this argument? I don't think it does. Who cares that the rate has increased or hasn't increased? B, gifts of cash and gift cards currently represent only about 14% of all gift giving. What has that got to do with the conclusion, right, that I I value the cash more than I do this table, which we want to weaken? C, people in the study would have been willing to pay more for gifts chosen for them by close friends and relatives than for gifts chosen for them by others. I don't see what that's got to do with, do I want this table or do I want the $100 gift card? D, not even do I want, do I value? D, people are unwilling to sell gifts chosen for them by others unless offered about 1.5 times the gift's actual price, and that's going to be the answer. And if you just stop again, it's now you're comparing. The reasoning and the argument had to do with what I was willing to pay. So I see this in the store and I say I'll pay $67 for it. But D says, now wait a minute. Once I get this as a gift, and somebody says, Peter, are you willing to sell this? And I say, sure, I'm willing to sell this. I'm willing to sell this for $150. Well, that directly undermines the argument. So D is going to be the answer. It's a very precise test. You want to be lawyers. And finally, E. Most retailers require receipts before people can return gifts for refund or exchange. I don't have a clue. Respectfully, I just don't have a clue how you really would understand this and pick E. So if you're picking E, you're just not using IRAC. You're really not drawing on the reservoir of your own reason, which really is what we need to do. So I'm going to hold it there. The 22 is D.